Well, I'm going to start the way we often start these interviews, which is to ask you to tell us a little bit about how your feminist identity developed. How did you become a feminist?
How did I become a feminist? That is the most obvious introductory question. It's not the one that I thought about.
Yeah.
Well, I think like a lot of people, I would have to say that much came from my mother's encouragement. And actually both of my parents, it wasn't a feminist encouragement per se, but education was very important to them, and there are four of us, and I'm the oldest. And it was always very important for them that we go to college. And that was kind of the message is, you have to go to college, you have to go to college. You know, after that, it was, there wasn't any like career ambitions or anything. I mean, my mom finished high school, my dad got his GED after he was finished with his Navy service in World War II, but so I was the first person in my family to go to college. And so I think it was more that, and also that they encouraged a kind of independence. So when my high school chemistry teacher said that there was this National Science Foundation summer program for kids doing science, and that there were scholarships, you know, my parents said, okay, yeah, you can go to Riverside, California, which was like 700 miles away for 6 weeks, and that's fine. And actually, there's a whole other interesting story about how I got to Riverside then, and the car broke down and everything. But so it was just kind of encouraging that kind of independence, I guess. And I remember actually quite vividly in 1969, I was able to. This was the great days of the California State Scholarships, which had been instituted in the early 60s to get people into college who were non-traditionally college students, women, students from rural areas, women and men of color, poor individuals. And so my state scholarship paid for 4 years of university, including a year in Rome, which transformed my life completely. But I remember being in Rome in the year 69 to 70, which was, you know, a real time of upheaval in the U.S. and everywhere else. But we were kind of in this sort of study abroad bubble. It was really strange. But I remember somebody had a Time magazine, and on the cover of the Time magazine was something about feminism. And I remember looking at that and going, like, what's that? And having no idea. Well, the following year, my senior year in college, sort of feminism was sort of bubbling around. And there was a new book out by Judy Bardwick on the psychology of women, and I read that, and part of it was really exciting because it was about women, and part of it was like, what is this stuff? And, you know, and I guess from there, so at that point I started to develop something that was really explicitly more a feminist consciousness. And then when I started graduate school at Penn State, it was, I think I'm 99% certain it was the first year, maybe it was the second year, but I think it was the first year that they did not artificially limit the number of women admitted into graduate study. Before that, of the, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 people admitted, there would be like 2 or 3 women.
And that was like a rule that they couldn't go?
You know, I have never, when I first moved back to Penn State 15 years ago, I tried to scare up some of the records, you know, and the old graduate records were gone by then. But for our year, there were 10 men and 10 women, and half of us were in clinical, and the other half were in experimental. I was in developmental psychology, and several of us were, you know, I've used this term before, and I don't particularly like it, but we were baby feminists.
Yeah.
We were baby feminists in the sense that we were like, all right, what are we going to do now? Like newly hatched, newly kind of turned on and a little pissed off.
Okay, good.
But we were in graduate school. We were first year graduate students. We were the bottom of the heap, and it was also at a time when you still called your professor by their, Dr. Harris and Dr. Sheriff and everything like that. And so we got into some troubles, yes.
Well, let me ask about those troubles, but let me also ask about the professoriate kind of during your PhD. What was the gender composition?
Oh, that's easy because it was something that really stood out at that moment. Of the 30-some tenure-line individuals, 2 were women.
Wow.
Ellen Pierce, who was in child clinical, and she did the Pierce-Harris, some kind of projective test.
Yeah, her name is familiar, yeah.
And I TA'd for her one semester, or actually it was, Penn State was on a quarter system at that point. And I had been warned about her, but we got along okay.
Was because she was hard or difficult?
Yeah, her method of survival had been, you have to be twice as good to show you're half as good.
Right, yeah. Don't give them any reason to think that you're
Right.
half as good, yeah.
But she was always good and fair to me, but it was definitely, you just have to do that. So she was pretty hard on grad students.
Yeah.
And then the other was Carolyn Sheriff.